All right. Can everybody hear me? Yes. So we'll kick off at 6:45 and welcome everybody to our CAPS club meeting tonight. I thought I'd muted everybody, but I can still hear something there. If you're not on mute, please do so. And Carmen and Wes, I guess, unmute yourselves. So to kick off tonight, Carmen will introduce Wes, our guest speaker tonight, and then Wes will give us his presentation on Unravelling Snag. And then once Wes's presentation has completed, we'll get into our CAPS meeting where we have our monthly assignment images. We have the presentation for tonight, and then we have a discussion set for after that. So everybody's welcome to stay if they want, but that is more CAPS centric, and this is everybody centric. So Carmen, if you'd like to get us going.
You bet. So I had the pleasure of listening to and viewing a presentation, an online presentation by Wes Bell a few months ago. It was titled Exposing Your Vulnerability. And I was very enraptured by Wes's images, as well as by his stories and his connection of his work to his personal life experiences and journey. And so I asked him to join our club and share that with us. And so he will be speaking about how he's come to where he is and how he creates series and what we can learn from that. Wes currently lives in Medicine Hat, and if you've had the opportunity to look at his images either on his website or at the gallery in Sherwood Park, you will recognize that they are very, I'd like to say, they are very representative of Alberta, of the Alberta landscape, the sparseness, the nature. So that is currently his focus, although he comes from a background in fashion photography, which he'll also tell us a little bit about. And if you haven't yet had a chance to view Wes's work, most of, I think the people on our call are from our photography club, but there may be others across Alberta. So he currently has an exhibit in Sherwood Park. And Wes and I were just having a little conversation about that before everybody joined the call, about how you just experience everything very differently when you see it on a wall in an exhibit rather than just on a computer screen. And with that, I'll turn it over to Wes. And I believe you can, if you have questions as we go along, we can type them into the chat and present them at the end, or is that how you want to do that, Wes, or would it be better for people to ask them as we go along?
I think if we ask them at the end, that would be great.
Okay, so if you have questions, either save them, jot them down. I'm sure you will have lots of questions, or put them into the chat and then we'll get to them at the end of the presentation.
I don't know if I mentioned, I thought we might take a 5-minute break when I get to the parameters, how to establish the parameters.
Sure.
This can get quite lengthy. And I think if we take maybe a 5-minute break.
Yeah.
And everybody can grab a drink of water or something.
That would be awesome.
Okay.
That would be awesome. Okay, so welcome, Wes Bell, and we'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Good evening. I'm honored to be here this evening and to be able to present to you my story, my work, my passion. And hopefully at the end, we can have a nice discussion. If you've got any questions, I'm extremely open to them. And I'm an open book, so you can ask anything you want. So I'll talk a little bit first about my career and how I got back to fine art photography after having a crazy life in the fashion world. After graduating from the Alberta College of Art in Calgary, now the Alberta University of the Arts, in 1980, I wholeheartedly pursued a career in fashion photography. Soon after, I followed my passions and departed for Milan, Italy, one of the pinnacles in the fashion world. The first few years were discouraging and bleak. However, with persistence and desire, things slowly began to appear more upbeat. My photographs started appearing in fashion publications in Italy and in the UK. 8 years later, I relocated to New York. Within a short period of time, my crew, and I were traveling the world on assignments to fulfill my clients' needs. Life was good. However, as we all know all too well, especially in oil-rich Alberta, what goes up must come down. The Great Recession and meltdown of the US economy in 2008 was followed by my own meltdown and personal life crisis. For too long, I looked backward and not forward to what would be the next step in my photographic journey. In retrospect, fashion photography generously paid the bills, provided me with a very exciting lifestyle and a very busy social life. But it ultimately left me feeling gutted as an artist. At the same time, my unhealthy personal relationships outside of my professional life started to become strained. I sought professional help that resulted in a combination of antidepressants and psychotherapy, but I didn't stick with it, and I went cold turkey. I chose not to address the reality, but rather live in a toxic mixture of addictive, intoxicating, and obsessive catastrophic thoughts of grief and loss. I was a mess. Living in the endless gloom of overpowering darkness and paralyzing denial, it ultimately led me to my short stay at the Mount Sinai Psychiatric Ward in Upper Manhattan. My mental health required urgent attention. Soon I was back on the sofa of my therapist, John. Week after week, month after month, for 2 years, I would say the same things over and over and over again until it finally started to make sense. It took a while, and eventually I decided to enroll in a history of photography class at a nearby university. After that, I completed 2 additional courses and also a history of surrealism class that helped me understand how the evoking of feelings through the use of visual art can open the doors of the unconscious mind. My passion for fine art photography had been re-energized. Over the past 12 years, I've created 7 very sizable, interrelated, and interwoven series or chapters of a visual story. Each story has its own subject matter, but uniquely, they are unified, cohesive, coherent, truthful, consistent, related bodies of work aesthetically and thematically. They have a deeper meaning. Okay, and now I'm going to do my presentation, Unravelling Snag. As I pulled away from Mom and Dad's condo, I looked back one more time and snapped 2 photos of Mom as she waved goodbye from the driveway. She was fully dressed, her cheeks noticeably hollow, and her expression strained and apprehensive. Heading west on the Trans-Canada Highway towards Calgary, I soon passed Redcliffe. It was a typical sunny and blustery southern Alberta September morning, with the prevailing westerly winds howling across the flat prairie landscape. The traffic was minimal. As if my head was forcibly being turned by the persistent and bursting gusts, I became distracted by the flapping remnants of plastic bags caught in barbed wire fences that ran parallel to the highway. Mile after mile, the fences that lined the ditches were embellished with these forgotten shreds of plastic that were being violently whipped by the wind. They appear to be trapped in the no man's land of boundary fences, neither here nor there, an emotional purgatory. Frayed, lacerated, and punctured, the objects drew me in. I stopped the car. Later on my flight, I would open my photo album on my phone several times and view the images I had shot along the highway. My curiosity for these familiar but often unseen objects grew. Arriving later that night in New York, I uploaded them onto my home computer and converted them into black and white. My heart sunk in sadness and reflection. 7 weeks later, Mom passed away. In 2015, I returned to the ditches and fence lines on the edges of highways and country roads of the windswept scene of southern Alberta to photograph these objects in the plain, seasonally muted, and monotone wide open spaces where the environmental forces are a harsh reality. Over the next 3 years, I would expose 108 rolls of black and white film while photographing the plastic rooms, not relying on my sight, but on my sense of touch. I developed the film in complete blackness. There was another darkness that I was coping with, the loss of a loved one. When film is exposed to the camera, a latent image is made and it remains there until it's brought into contact with the developer. The image becomes visible and permanent only after it's been treated with the fixing agent, desensitizing it to light. Like in science, many things lay dormant in our lives until activated by the right combination of events or circumstances. Moving from working in total darkness to the red amber ambience of the darkroom safe light brought therapeutic comfort and warmth. The choice of nostalgic music from the 1960s and 70s helped sweeten the pungent stench of the chemically saturated air. Perhaps it was a yearning to return to the past when things seemed better. Given the physical process of the plastic's decomposition, it was critical to the logic of the photograph to maintain the immediacy of their chemical indexical imprint on the film and its translation onto photo paper, creating a substantial presence that would have been impossible to achieve digitally. A real hug beats an emoji. I often felt the physical warmth of the mid-afternoon sun on my back as I knelt in the ditches behind my camera and tripod. I would pre-visualize the final photograph, compose it in the viewfinder, anticipate its motion, look for the pinnacle of its expressive form, and press and release the shutter. Over 68 sites were photographed. Some locations required multiple visits to ensure the optimal lighting and wind conditions. In this series called Snag, the photographs are deeply rooted in loss, mortality, and remembrance. Our eventual passing is universal. It does not provide an opportunity for any of us to opt out of. The scenes are simple and ordinary, and the objects are ubiquitous. Based on isolating and elevating the unseen, the photographs contain the past, the present, and the future. On one level, what was the object? What is it now? And what will it be in the future? Or more thought-provoking, who was I in the past? Who am I now? And how will I succumb? The photographs at first sight are physical, material representations of a reality. They are, however, much more than this. The optical unconscious, as described by Walter Benjamin, a critical thinker, permits us to see things we normally would not be sensitive to. It allows us to access the part of the mind containing feelings, desires, images, and ideas not always available for direct analysis. Attuned to the impermanent, ambiguous, and abstract nature of life, the plastic becomes a metaphor for mortality, pain, and death, while unearthing repressed feelings of fear and anxiety. The fragile and ephemeral characteristic of life is reinforced through the struggle of the plastic as it fights to free itself from its entanglement in the unforgiving barbed wire. In contrast, there is beauty in poetry, in the ballooning ragged forms as if their lungs are taking one more deep breath, and in hope of physical or spiritual deliverance. The uncanny photographs of Mom waving goodbye remain unprinted and are only code in digital files. The photographs haunt me and yet hold so much beauty. I can't look at them often, but when I do, it's as if Mom was a world away already on that last day I saw her alive. They are so personal. In all honesty, the photographs of my mom wouldn't have meant much to you. You didn't know her. I hope that by Unravelling Snag, that you too will take the time in your daily habitual lives to elevate your curiosity, to find the hidden beauty that surrounds you in the most common places, allowing your observations and your emotions to ignite a newfound understanding and excitement for this precious and transitory life. Snag. Okay. Are you able to hear me, Carmen? Yes. Okay. So let's get into creating a series of photographs. First of all, what is a series in art? The general description of a series of artwork is one unified, cohesive, and coherent related body of work that employs the same technique, subject, theme, or palette, colors, or tonal ranges throughout the multiple works. The set of images interact with each other in order to illuminate or illustrate a specific subject, communicate and deliver a message, present a vision, tell a story or a narrative, reveal a truth, contain a specific aesthetic, etc. Each independent image is ideally strong enough to stand on its own, and they are uniquely different from each other, not identical images. But collectively, when grouped together, they complement each other and reinforce the subject of this series because they contain the elements of cohesiveness and interconnectivity by conscious and deliberate decisions made by you, the artist. Speaking very generally, a painter might choose to use a medium such as oil, acrylic, or watercolor on a canvas. A photographer, in order to create durable images by recording light, might choose to use a chemically based light-sensitive material such as film, which is analog photography, or electronically by using an image sensor, which is digital photography, and then reproduce those images or captures on photographic paper for a physical portfolio or gallery prints, or alternatively present them in digital form, such as on Instagram, or in a portfolio on a personal website. However, prior to all of this, there are a multitude of considerations to be made before setting out to produce a collection of images that are shown in unison and are somehow linked together by a theme and presented together whether it be painting or photography or any other style of art. Purely by definition, 2 or 3 photographs could technically be considered a series, a diptych or a triptych. However, in art photography, a photo series is most often considered to be 5 or more images, although there is no written firm rule. This is especially true for submission calls for online competitions and art gallery submission calls where the artist's work is presented for the jurist or curator's review. In my opinion, 2 or 3 images would only be considered the early or initial stages of a series and not eligible to be termed a complete series at this early stage of development. I might be biased though, as I recently shot up to 151 individual images for one series that will eventually be edited down to a series of 21 to 36 final photographs. It's part of my obsessiveness. Seriously, if you set 5 images as your initial target, the bare minimum of what might be your series, you'll be okay. But I do recommend always aiming higher to fully research, develop, and explore, express or reinforce your concept or theme, especially as you become more familiar, knowledgeable, and experienced at series building. 10 is often the maximum number of images required for a series submission for online sites like lensculture.com. Creating a large series is a challenging process and requires a lot of patience and time by setting clear parameters, but it provides great personal and professional reward once achieved. We'll get into the parameters in a short while. Second, how to make a photo series. Is it intentional or unintentional? Perhaps as you're at home, sifting through and reviewing and archiving your hundreds of images you've made over the past few years, you might start seeing similarities in the images that could potentially fulfill the basic requirements of what makes up a series. You might start cataloging your images by moving old, decomposing rural buildings images into one folder and songbird or flower photos into another folder, creating separate bodies of work. But does that make a strong and valuable series? With good editing and by sheer coincidence, you might be able to draw together a mediocre series out of these works. In essence, you've unintentionally created a series of images. The series wasn't preconceived, although for whatever reason, subconsciously or randomly, you were attracted to a subject or theme of sorts on several separate occasions while out shooting, and you repeatedly photographed a scene or similar scenes that have some kind of commonality. That's cool, and it's valid, but it's not what we're going to be addressing this evening. Tonight, we're going to discuss how to intentionally create and build a series of new photographs, such as I did with Snag. But first, I want to talk to you about why you would want to intentionally create a series. What would be the purpose of creating a series? I want you to ask yourself, why do I create images? What ultimately are the intentions of the photographs that I make? Do I create photographs only for myself, or am I creating them for others to see, enjoy, experience, and maybe learn from? What kind of photographer or shooter am I? Am I totally spontaneous and take pictures of this and that and everything, hoping to ultimately capture something that my viewers, audience, and I like without any consistency in the theme or the subject matter? Am I a random, let's see what happens kind of shooter? Are the images I'm shooting all over the map as far as content, subject matter, lighting and weather conditions, color, saturation and tonality, contrast, angle, focal length, etc.? Is it all by chance and then I might get lucky and get a shot or do I research and preconceive the image long before I head out to make the photograph? Do I have a plan? Or am I going to go carte blanche? Is there anything cohesive about my images as I scroll through them later when I get home and upload them onto my computer? Is there a thread of continuity that joins them together? If you're happy with where you're at in your photography and you're making photographs only for yourself, why would you want to challenge yourself to developing and building a series of photographs that's going to take a lot of time, focus, discipline, commitment, and yes, maybe frustration? You may not want to, and that's fine too. So in essence, I'm asking you, what are your own expectations of your photography? What are your goals? And what do you want to achieve with your photographs? What do you want to do with them? Where do you want your photographs to live? Who is your audience? As I mentioned earlier, you may have additional intentions such as organizing and building an online portfolio, submitting your work for photography competitions and art gallery submission calls, or alternatively presenting your physical printed portfolio to an art gallery curator or a portfolio reviewer at a photo festival such as the annual Exposure Photography Festival in Calgary, or at your art club's annual portfolio review, or showing a prospective client your photography work. Ask yourself, if I presented my portfolio the way it is today, would the person reviewing the work have any idea who I am as an artist? What is my style, direction, or passion? Or would they be lost and confused and have no idea who I am with my photography work or what it's all about? How would they describe it? Maybe you want to challenge yourself to the process of creating a series because you have seen other photographer series that have resonated with you. Seeing their series, you experienced and recognizing the overwhelming impact it produced, and you want to try your hand at creating one too. That's cool. You might have a social, political, or environmental issue that you find alluring, and you think it needs to be addressed and represented from your point of view and expressed through a visual tool that you are familiar with, such as photography. Your intentions might be as simple as showing your images to your friends and your family on your Instagram posts or on your iPad photo album, and you would like to hold their attention span longer than 1 minute. These would all be good reasons to consider for creating and building a new photographic series. What are the advantages of the series over shooting individual or one-of photographs? What method could you employ to communicate clearly to others that don't live in your mind what your inspirations and motivations are for making photographs? Just within your photo club, some members might be familiar with you in your work since you've been an active member for quite some time, while others may not know you and have never seen your work. How can you help them understand you and your photography? Can one photo accurately describe everything about photography, about your photography? I doubt it. Would a series of photographs that are consistent in theme and content tell a story, have the potential to best describe you and your photography? Would the creation of the unified, cohesive, coherent, related bodies of work communicate more about your photography style better than the everything and anything that strikes your fancy approach you've been doing in the past? Do you really want to burden your viewer, your audience, with trying to figure out who the heck you are as an artist and what you're trying to say with all these random helter-skelter images that hold no rhyme or reason? When you get home tonight, take a quick look to see if there's a common thread in your presentation of the images. is there any consistency in the themes, in the subject matter, in the lighting, in the composition? Are you yourself, the creator of the images, able to make any sense out of them? There are huge advantages to having some sense of order by creating series of images that possess the same idea, theme, philosophy, content, topic, composition, or subject matter. Of course, you don't only make photographs for yourself and for others. Of course, you don't only make photographs for others, you make them for yourself. And that's really important. Developing a series will help you remain engaged, immersed in your photography. Your enthusiasm for photography will once again become re-energized through the challenge, and you will discover new things about yourself and the photographic process that will help define your style, technique, and growth as an artist. In many ways, your portfolio is somewhat like a CV or resume, but in a visual art sense. If your employment history shown in your resume is all over the map and shows a huge diversity of job types and skills, how does the human resources person reviewing your online application know whom you are or what your specialty might be? Is it random, disorganized chaos? Carmen, are you still able to see me?
Yes, I am, Wes. We
Okay.
just have this Zoom screen. Not sure what happened.
Okay. Now imagine you're presenting your portfolio to an art gallery curator in person or through an online submission call, or directing a prospective client to your website or Instagram account. Perhaps you're hoping that if you show a variety of styles, subjects, locations, themes, colors, and black and white compositions, lighting situations, the viewer might eventually like something or you'll win their approval. Will the randomness you're presenting confuse and finally exhaust the viewer? Now consider what would assist your submission more effectively in receiving a serious and thorough constructive critique. A series helps to simplify the review process. Rather than having to sift through everything and try to make heads or tails of it, the photo series helps to create order and reveals a pattern of intent in your work. From experience, I can tell you that most curators and jurists have incredibly short attention span, as their time is valuable. They are busy and swamped with submissions from hundreds and sometimes thousands of artists desperately trying to get their attention. Artists that present a something for everyone portfolio make a huge mistake. The person reviewing the work can't make sense of it. They become overwhelmed by the unorganized assortment of images. They simply don't have the time, the patience, or the energy to analyze every single piece or try to figure out how to put it together to make sense of it. How, in this case, can the reviewer establish the artist's identity or purpose? It's simply too much at once. By presenting a portfolio of images like this, you're asking your reviewer to take on the responsibility of trying to figure out your work. Please remember, in the case of an art gallery, the curator rightfully expects that the artist perform this task for them, not the other way around. So I ask you, where are you going with your work? What do you stand for? What is your art, your photography all about? If your only intent is to make money, please consider that an artist with a defined style will see higher dollar values for their art as the artist, and their artwork becomes more recognizable and more desirable. It's that simple. Some of you might be saying that developing a series is too restrictive and too repetitive. Let me propose to you that the process encourages you to dig deeper, allows you, the artist, to become more involved and ultimately creates within you a greater commitment to your project. The deeper you get into the series, the more creative possibilities you'll discover along the way in your artistic journey. As you research and discover further information in your investigation, the better informed you and also your viewer will become of the subject or theme of your series. Do you want your audience to have a superficial encounter with random, unrelated works? Or would you prefer that your viewers' curiosity is raised and they become deeply engaged in your knowledge of the subject and authority demonstrated in your photographs? Because of your commitment to your project, you'll be able to grow connected to your own creative juices and let them flow, and at the same time present your audience an enhanced and intensified experience. Please don't underestimate yourself or your followers. In this journey, both you and your followers will find out where your art comes from your belly or from your heart. What's it all about? Why it exists or where it's going. Your followers want to go on a journey with you. Engage with your narrative. Go along for the ride and have an experience. But you need to provide them with the means to do so easily and accessibly by revealing who you are as an artist. Art gallery curators are always looking for new artists who are capable of producing exactly what they show. Exhibitions of coherent, unified bodies of work with the intention that their guests can connect with the work and understand it, not get turned off and leave in frustration. The gallery wants their guests to have an informed, enlightened, and inspired experience, one that will encourage them to come back again. Artists don't intentionally try to confuse their audiences. They aim to communicate, express, inform, and educate their viewers about things that are important to them. Will producing a series help you to achieve this goal? How and where to start a photo series? First, establish a theme that'll help tell a narrative or a story that you want to tell, that is personal to you, and that can be communicated consistently through each of the images individually in your series, as well as collectively when presented as a group or series of images. Not only do images in the series need to work as a group, each individual image also needs to stand on its own merit. Consider whether the theme is specific enough that it will provide a definitive and unique perspective. Tighten your idea, theme, or concept so that it isn't too vague or too general. Too general can result in it becoming uninteresting or diluted due to it being too all-embracing, or it encompasses too wide the scope. Zoom in on your target. How do you give this series your own personal perspective? You do so by making it your own and owning it. It's so easy to emulate other artists' ideas and call them your own. There is no harm in researching other artists' work for inspiration in their technique or how they address the theme, but do not copy or imitate another artist's work. It is simply wrong. A cheap copy is worthless. It holds no value. Make the idea your own by distinguishing it from the original inspiration. In 2018, I was made aware of a beautiful series of photographs called Plastic Trees by Eduardo Leo. They are color photographs of plastic remnants caught in brush in Bolivia. His theme was environmental and drew awareness to the problem plastic brings to our planet. I panicked when I heard of the series' existence, and it forced me to research when he released the images in 2015. Digging deeper, I was relieved to find out that I had started Snag a year before he had started shooting plastic trees. Although there are huge differences in the images, themes, and inspiration, I wanted to be secure in knowing that my Snag series of photographs were unique, original, and authentic. Does your theme hold water? Is it based in fact? Is it truthful? You will have to do some research and a deep dive into the subject. If it's based in fantasy, are you able to draw your viewer in by creating believable illusions and sets that will provide them a convincing escape from reality? While working on Snag, I drew from my own personal experiences in therapy, and I started reading and collecting more information about grief, loss, and remembrance. Also, learning to write about your series will be extremely helpful as you uncover and reveal your feelings and your emotions. It provides you a roadmap to where you're heading in the development of the series and ultimately aids you in writing your artist statement about your work. Will you be able to convince your audience of the relevancy and authenticity of the work? Snag was built using remnants of shredded plastic bags as metaphors for the real fear, loss, and impermanence I felt because of my mother's terminal illness and ultimately her death. Loss, remembrance, and death are universal. Snag is relevant and authentic. Find a theme that will hold your interest without you becoming bored. Again, choose a subject or theme that is important to you on a personal level. Don't take it on because it's trendy. Snag was deeply personal, as it was the death of my mother that was the inspiration of the work. Simultaneously, while grieving and processing her death, I was making new artworks, keeping me deeply engaged in the making of the series. There was no time to get bored. Remaining engaged and enthused will help you as you adventure through the long but incredibly rewarding process of creating a series. Consider the time frame of how long it'll take to research and plan this series, or what is termed the pre-production stage. For all of my various series, I've always location scouted the various objects months, weeks, and days in advance of photographing them. I would photograph the sites using my iPhone, and it would provide me the GPS or location of where they are located, so I could easily locate them again. From this, I could gather information such as the direction of the sun and the ideal time of day to photograph them, provided there was bright sun and strong winds. Consider how long the production time or shooting of the images will take. I knew after one season of shooting Snag that I would continue the following spring shooting more images for the Snag series. Although the pre-production started in 2013 with the initial idea, I shot for 3 years during the in-between seasons of winter to spring from 2015 to 2017 before it turned green. The post-production time of processing film and printing contact sheets after each of the seasons was approximately 2 weeks. The final editing took approximately 1 week, while the final printing took 3 weeks from beginning to end. Consider the season, months, time of day, weather, type of light, car, pedestrian traffic, travel time, etc. that could affect your shooting schedule. Research your idea or area of interest. Dig deep and go to sources both online, magazines, newspapers, or at college or public libraries to find visual and factual information about what you're exploring. Consider writing about your idea and putting the pictures in your head into words that will help you to determine your subject and how you're going to approach it. Write down keywords that help you sort through the numerous ideas that might be bouncing around in your head. Create an inspiration wall, file, or sketchbook that contains visuals of things that will inspire you to work through the series. Consider if you'll be able to find enough examples of the objects, sites, subjects, or people that you will require to produce 5 or more photographs for the series that are consistent in content or subject matter. Are they readily available? Are they accessible? Are they on private property? And if so, will I be able to access it if I need to? Snag was shot in the ditches on public property, on the public property side of the fence line, so permission from the landowner was not needed to access the sites. I photographed 68 sites in southern Alberta over 3 years. Not once did I have to step onto private property. Initially, for the first exhibition of Snag, I showed 28 final images. After the series was reduced to 24 final images, as I eliminated 4 images that I considered ultimately being fillers, or images that didn't hold the same significance or strength individually as the others. They weren't resonating as important to the series. Remember that good editing is one of the most essential components in making a photographic series. If you aren't sure about an image, ask a friend or colleague for their input. Editing and sequencing can make or break the success of the series. Remember, if it's people that you're photographing, are they willing to have their photograph taken? And will they give you written permission should you want to publish the photographs or submit them for a photography contest or exhibition call? Without model releases, your images may not be able to be published in online gallery or in a publication or even hung in for some particular galleries. Each country, jurisdiction, or organization has its own set of rules regarding these issues. Again, what is the intention of the series? It is essential to review and consider the intentions of your photography in the series you're going to produce in the pre-production stage, as it will help set you in the right direction and help eliminate doubts and qualms about the series as you proceed. So here's where I'd like to take a break, and I'll get more into the parameters, if that's okay.
Perfect. Do you want to take any questions this far, or?
Yeah, well, we could, or I can just go on with the parameters and then take questions.
Sure. Yeah, we'll just take a brief 5-minute break.
Is that okay?
That's perfect.
Perfect, thank you. Are we on mute now?
No, you can mute yourself if you wish, and that's totally up to you.
Are we on mute to the other people who are in the group, or no?
No, it's still running live, just taking a break, I guess. And
Okay.
we're all just watching you, I think.
Oh, no. Oh, so if anybody's watching, this is the camera that I use. One of the cameras that I use. I have 2 of these. They're a good sized camera, quite heavy. This is the light meter. Everything is totally manual. There's no autofocus to any of this.
Good choice of light meters.
Yeah. When I work, I take meticulous notes of all the locations. I know the shot numbers from if I'm shooting film. I know the roll from each frame. I know the exposure. So when I hop into the darkroom, if there's any questions as to why the exposure might look a little crazy, and I'm processing film, I know what might have happened, so I can correct it for any further processing. I know the specific location for each shot. It's really important that I record and present locations when the photos are being exhibited or in publication. The title always includes the location. These are 2 binders that are full of negatives. I shot 108 rolls, so there's both the negatives and the contact sheets that are in these. So there's a lot of film and a lot of processing happening here. That's a lot of talking for me. Okay, Carmen, I would be ready if you are.
I am ready. Let's just give people a couple more minutes, maybe if they did wander off to get some water or a bathroom break or something.
Yeah, sounds good to me. I'm glad to see that the door hasn't opened on itself. That was so crazy. All of a sudden, it just opened, and there was this beautiful light coming through. It was quite spiritual.
I'm sure it was that my window was open and the door probably wasn't quite latched.
It was quite mysterious. I love it. Is that macrame I see hanging in the corner with the spider plant?
It is macrame, yes, made by my son.
Made by your son. Excellent.
Yep.
Good.
Yeah.
I remember macrame back in, what was it, the 70s, I think?
Probably, yeah.
When
Yeah, I used to make it when I was young.
Yeah.
And my son found a love of plants actually when he got his first plant from my mom, his grandma, who has passed away, and he's always really cherished his plant from her and now has a love of plants. And so I made him a plant hanger.
Fantastic.
And he thought it was just amazing. And ever since then, he is quite the macrame artist. He makes wall hangings and all kinds of things. So I taught him the beginnings, but he's way better than me now.
It's a great use of time. He's being productive, right? That's fantastic.
Yeah, and it's useful.
And it's useful. Yeah, it's practical too.
All right. I think we can probably resume.
Okay, so now I want to talk about practical considerations when establishing the parameters for the series. Things to consider. I'm going to get a little bit into the technical end of it, as far as cameras and lenses and things like that. Other considerations when you're establishing those parameters of building a series. Things to consider. What camera am I going to use consistently? Will it be digital or analog? Do I need to make a choice and stick with it? In Snag, I exclusively used a 6x6 format Hasselblad camera. It's a high-end manual camera that requires manual light meter readings and manual focus. There is absolutely nothing about it, nothing automatic about it. Some of you might have several camera bodies and a wide array of lenses, and that's fine. But it is in no way essential to making a photo series or any photograph for that matter. May I propose to you tonight that although the quality of the camera absolutely affects the quality of the image, it is more often the quality of your concept and your thought process and execution of the picture making that'll often make the difference between what is a successful image and what is not. Yes, it is a delicate dance, however. Learn to work around the technical difficulties you may have with your current camera. You may not always be able to change the camera, but you could definitely always improve on your thought process. And it costs nothing. And work around the camera's deficiencies, or in other words, work with what you have. The curator does not care if you use the newest and most expensive camera on the market. They only care about whether the final image resonates with them. Another consideration is what focal length will I use to provide aesthetic consistency in the images, or can there be a mix to provide changes that have been considered previously to shooting, or will I haphazardly just shoot and see what happens later in the editing stage? Will I use one specific focal length that will help to provide one perspective that does not create distortion, or do I want to use wide angle lenses to intentionally create visual distortion and impact, or a long lens to produce compression? In Snag, I only use two lenses, one normal lens and one slightly wide angle lens, so that there would be no distortion of the lines of strung barbed wire at the edges of the frame. I did not use any telephoto or zoom lenses. Everything was extremely basic. I did use a reliable tripod that was sturdy, that I could adjust quickly, and a small handheld Minolta light meter. Another thing to think about is, will the depth of field be shallow or deep, or include variations of depth of field along with both slow and quick shutter speeds, or will there be a variation of shutter speeds? Will I consistently shoot using a similar f-stop or aperture size? What will the shutter speed be? In Snag, I used wide open apertures and other times fully stopped down apertures, depending on whether I wanted shallow depth of field using selective focus with blurs of the flapping remnants, or large, sharply focused images of plastic caught frozen in midair. These were also determined by the amount of sunlight present and whether they were photographed at mid-afternoon or late in the day, and what the velocity of the winds were. The combination of the aperture and shutter speed became essential technical information for Snag. Oftentimes, I was manually adjusting and using selective focus, using the information provided on the lens barrel in accordance to the f-stop and distance of my desired depth of field. It's extremely technical and slow, but essential to the overall aesthetic in regards to the sharpness of the focus. What ISO will I use that will provide me with consistency in the appearance of the images? What presets or profiles will I set in my camera so that they will remain consistent throughout the series? In Snag, I rated my film's ISO at 400, except for 2 rolls of film that were exposed at 800, due to a lack of speed and a low daylight level in order to freeze the motion of the flapping remnants of plastic. They provided consistency in the grain size and contrast of the final images on the film. For those of you using digital cameras, you will want to be aware of the noise that might occur as you increase your ISO to high numbers, as it can become quite noticeable, as well give visual changes in contrast, etc., if it's not kept under control or considered in the shooting stage. Remember visual consistency and what are your intentions with the photographs in the post-production stage. Will there be visual relief using scale changes? from one photograph to another, close-ups versus far away. In Snag, for scale relief, a few close-ups were shot to produce visual momentum or rhythm when viewing the final edited series installed in an art gallery exhibition. If you're shooting portraits of people, will you include close-ups alongside full-length images? What camera angle or point of view will I use? In Snag, I used one straight-on and direct camera angle without any variation to provide visual consistency, graphic quality, and direct engagement with the underlying uncomfortable theme. I laid and knelt in ditches so that I would have a straight-on view of the plastic remnants while also avoiding any unnecessary telephone poles or farm equipment or buildings in the background that could become distracting. Will I shoot full frame and not crop the images later in post-production? Will all of the images be portrait or landscape in format, or will there be a mix? And if so, how will it affect the consistency and overall streamlined and deliberate appeal of the presentation? All of the Snag images were composed and cropped in camera with minimal cropping in the final printing stage. The image of the final print was envisioned prior to pressing the shutter. All of the images in Snag remained square in format, just as they were composed and shot using a square format camera. Will I shoot in color and then alter the files later in Photoshop to enhance the image's contrast, saturation, etc.? Snag was shot 100% using analog film, Ilford HP 400 ISO 120 size black and white film. All the photographs were shot using film and a square camera. Given the focus of the subject matter on physical material processes of decomposition by natural forces, it was critical to the logic of the series to maintain the immediacy of their chemical and lexical imprint on film. Its translation onto a slightly warm toned fiber paper creates a material, substantial presence that would have been impossible to achieve digitally. The paper stock and surface type remain consistent throughout the series, not jumping from semi-luster or pearl to glossy and back to matte. Will I shoot camera raw or JPEG files? If so, what size? Again, what is the intention of this series? Where will the images appear and how will they be used? What size will they ultimately be printed? Is my camera's sensor size sufficient for the size and quality of the prints I have envisioned? Because Snag was shot using a medium format film, the largest size to maintain maximum premium quality is approximately a 16 by 20 inch gelatin silver print. However, the negatives could be printed larger if I'm ready to accept the increase in grain size. It would require that I also have access to an enlarger for very large prints, or alternatively, the negatives could be scanned on a high resolution Heidelberg drum scanner, and larger prints could be made using a digital printer, but it would compromise the deeper meaning of the series. What is the maximum output of your printer? How do you envision your series to be presented? Does it make a difference? For Snag, I had pre-envisioned the frame photographs to be hung in a gallery in a single line with a small space between the frames. As the line of photographs meet in the corner, the line would continue on to the next wall. This would be representative of the flat and straight prairie highways and crossroads I've traveled where I've found and photographed the lacerated shreds of plastic, and the frequency that I located the plastic bags caught in the barbed wire fences. Does the season or time of year affect the theme or subject of your series? Does it enhance the mood of the photographs, or does it distract from it? Does snow, flowers, autumn foliage, or green grass distract from the underpinnings of your theme? Does rain or overcast affect the aesthetic of your project, or does the shiny, wet pavement and clouds add desirable visual elements such as highlights and drama? Does the quality of light in the various seasons we experience change the outcome of your visual narrative? Snag was shot in the season between winter and spring when there was no snow or moisture on the ground. There could be no signs of green grass or prairie blossoms. Because the tall prairie grasses get flattened during the winter months by the heavy snow, the prairie grasses did not poke up from behind or in front of the barbed wire fence or in front of the shreds of plastic, causing visual distraction. They provided uninterrupted views at the horizontal graphic lines created by the barbed wire fencing and the shreds of plastic remnants. In all cases, except for one image, the wind was strong and persistent, creating movement and providing energy in the photographs. Will I restrict myself to a specific geographic area, or does anything go? Let's say, for example, I'm shooting a series about pine trees in my area where I live that are sadly dying due to an infestation of pine beetles. And next week, I'm going to be traveling to BC for a family camping trip. While I'm there, if I see more trees with the same beetle infestation, will I photograph them? How does this change the parameter I've set in my series description and the theme, or will it dilute it? Does the time of day affect the photograph? Establish what color temperature of the available light or auxiliary lighting will be ideal for both indoor and outdoor photography. Also, is the lighting appropriate for the mood of the photographs you're setting to make? Jumping from one lighting source to another may not be appropriate and may cause inconsistency. Can I mix the lighting sources? Should the color temperature be consistent throughout the series? And if so, how will you achieve consistency? Does the angle of the sun and the shadows it creates affect the consistency throughout the series of photographs? In the summer, the sun is harsh and almost directly above you, while in the winter, the sun is low, providing long, deep, moody shadows. Will you jump up? Will you jump around using front light to back light and maybe back to back light and then back to front light and all over the place? How many different kinds of lighting examples do you want to have in your work? In Snag, for example, for one instance, the sunlight needed to be bright, crisp, hard, and contrasting. Clouds in the sky were okay as they added depth to the sky, but the sun had to be shining through them. One exception was made because the strength or overall quality of image outweighed the lack of bright sunshine. Parameters must be made, but can be broken. But do it with caution so you don't compromise the integrity of your series. In closing this evening, I want to encourage you to start to create a process of building and creating an engaging, insightful, cohesive, and meaningful series of photographs where you can dive deeper into your photographic journey. You might say, I'm not on board with sticking to one theme or one subject at a time. It's too restrictive. Okay, that's fine. I would rather hear that you're going to give it your best by perhaps shooting two series simultaneously by multitasking in your art practice. You'll soon see how that works out for you. In the past, I've balanced shooting 3 series at once. When I was shooting Snag, I was also photographing images for Wrapped and in Plain Sight. Because the series because the scenes I am attracted to are simple and ordinary, are multi-layered with metaphors, exposing my own issues of fear, loss and pain, impermanence and mortality, It was difficult. It was not difficult to shoot multiple series at one time, as I wasn't jumping from one deeper meaning to another or from one theme to another. The underpinnings of each of the 3 series were similar, and together they became a part of the narrative of my life's journey while exposing my vulnerability. As the author revealing my feelings, each series literally became a new chapter in my story. When I started working on this presentation over the past several weeks, I was pondering how I could passionately but practically discuss with you how to create and develop a photo series like Snag. During this process, it dawned on me that my previous career in fashion photography in part provided me with the experience, knowledge, and discipline to develop a fine art photographic series. In fashion editorials and campaigns, the fashion and creative director often would ask me to create a colorful and cohesive fashion story or campaign that flowed from page to page, image to image, creating a fantasy for their viewer. Like in Snag, I would pre-visualize the photograph, compose it in the viewfinder, anticipate the motion, look for the pinnacle of its expressive form, and press and release the shutter. Except this time, it came from my heart, and I was doing it for myself. Long gone are the days of large photography crews, art directors, and exotic locations. Now it's just me and my camera, and it feels so much better. Creating these photographs has challenged me, but ultimately provided me with the courage to openly share with you what I'm feeling. They help me to untangle the cruel and complicated roots of my depression by revealing parts of myself I may not have been able to access or come to have known otherwise. I hope that as you are reflecting on your own artworks tonight and the possibility of creating a new photo series for yourself, that your imagination and creativity will provide you with a quiet and introspective moment, while also delivering a sense of hope, inspiration, and an unexpected glimmer of solace and beauty in our complicated and busy, multi-layered world. I look forward to your questions and comments, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Wes. That was very insightful, both on the technical and practical levels, but also the personal levels. Telling your story, sharing something of yourself, it gives so much more meaning to your work.
I find that by doing this work, my art has become my therapy. And it's interesting that men aren't very good at exposing our feelings or our emotions.
Mm-hmm.
And I find this to be really important, that I share it with as many people as I can, especially at this time right now when everything seems so crazy and so over the top.
Mm-hmm.
I have a passion for art, and I hope that I can inspire other people to follow their imagination and their dreams. Photography is unique in being able to open those doors of aligning our perceptions with our emotions.
Yeah. I see someone has just posted in the chat, interesting that we've just had 2 presentations around mental health, and that is correct. Our previous speaker last meeting, also male, shared a lot of his journey with mental health and how photography helped him. So it's great. It's great to hear, especially from men, like you say, that the courage to share your own journey. It's very important. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any questions? Can they hop on? They can ask live?
Yeah, sure. Anybody who has a question, we're not that big of a group, so feel free to just unmute yourself and ask your question if you have some.
Or does anybody else want to talk about a series they may be working on? Very silent.
So I shot some images close to a year ago that just sort of spur of the moment, all in one day, that I thought, oh, maybe I will try to create a series out of this. So I'm actually playing with it right now, more for the learning process of what it takes to put a series together. But I shot it in Waterton on a very, very gray, rainy day. And it's all about the forest fire devastation.
Yes.
So just one day, which is very different from what you have talked about. But as I was listening to your parameters, I'm like, well, the lighting was the same, overcast, very moody, dramatic, low cloud, raindrops, lots of like the pavement was sort of had all those highlights, like you say, from rain. So yeah, I'm just playing with it. And like I say, it's more for the process of seeing, learning about the cohesion of it and what can fit together.
And you were also capturing the black burnt bark.
Yes.
And I'm sure because of the moisture, it was even more saturated.
Yes. Yeah. And just, very bare landscapes, but then wildflowers popping up. So I'm undecided if black and white tells my story enough.
It sounds as if there's a lot more exploration to do in there.
And a revisit, maybe.
Yeah, revisit. Yeah. And it's interesting, that you noted that the weather was important, and the time of year. Shooting in the wrong season can really destroy the impact that your idea may have, right? If you're shooting something, with blooming flowers, but not that flowers were wrong, because that was proper, it was the right season for them to be happening for you when you were there. But if you're trying to present something that's supposed to be an autumn feeling or a winter feeling, but there's some flowers in the background, things that make it disjointed and cause confusion for the viewer. I'm really hoping that people don't reach back too. I mean, you were already inspired when you were doing it. People get inspired to produce new artwork and not rehash the old stuff that they've done years ago and digging in there. Let's move forward and make new stuff. Let's make things that are relevant to your life today and perspectives that you're looking at, from your current age, from your point of view, things that are impacting your life. Maybe, like I said, it's fantasy, but make sure that when you're doing fantasy, that it's believable, that you're able to take it to that point where it's believable, and it's not like, well, I don't really believe it. It's, you haven't taken it far enough.
Right.
Is there any questions?
I see we had someone with their hand up. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Oh, hi, my name is Ruth, and I'm just wondering if you think there's a difference between a photo series and a photo project, like a longer, not a longer term, but a photo project that's running on, I don't know how to describe it. I guess I'm thinking of the work that you just presented, and work of somebody like Jane Evelyn Atwood, who, did that long, that photo project of well, she's done a number of them. One I'm thinking of, it was someone who was dying of AIDS, and that was in France. And then another one that was Ukrainian caregivers taking care of senior citizens in, it might have been France as well. But I don't know if you're familiar with her work at all, but do you see a difference in that?
Well, I mean, in her work, there would be consistency in the theme, correct?
Yeah,
Um, and in the subject matter. So it becomes a long project, a long series of work that she's developing. I would from what I'm hearing from the description that you're making, I would assume it's a series.
because you could do a series with living subjects. I think you mentioned like portrait photography, as well as something inanimate, right?
Yep, absolutely. A series is just, like I said, it's something that has unity about it, right? When you're looking at it. So it's not like you're shooting somebody dying, and then the next thing you're shooting a parade, and then the next thing you're photographing, a car show. And you know what I'm saying? You're not all over the map with it. You're sticking to that one idea, which of hers was somebody who was dying, and photographing the stages that their body and perhaps their mental health was, as they degressed in the quality of life that they were having, that journey of dying, and I would say that, from my perspective, that would be a series. And a really
Because
good.
it would be unified both in the visual aspects, but also what it's emotionally raises in the viewer as well, right?
Yeah, and I mean, I'm not aware of the work immediately, but is she shooting it in color? Is she shooting it in black and white? What were the aesthetic choices? Was it consistent? Was it jumping all over the map visually, or did it, was she cognizant of the aesthetic as
Yeah,
well as the
yeah.
subject?
Yeah, I think it was all color. It was kind of, the lighting was similar. Yeah, you're right. It was. Yeah, I'm working on well, I have a couple projects on the go, and thank you very much for your presentation and for answering my question right now, because I think what I'm missing is this consistency in lighting and emotional feel
Right.
of the images. So thank you.
What is your sub? Do you mind talking a little bit about your project?
Well, I've been working on just a photo project on Elk Island,
Uh-huh.
and just photographing the park. It's a national park that's east of Edmonton, and when I get up there, and for that, I tend to I go out early in the morning, so that they're always early in the morning. I tend to prefer winter over summer. And then I have another one that I'm working on just on winter. And I actually live in Calgary, close to the mountains. And so it's kind of trying, I guess, to evoke, I don't know, the cold and the loneliness and the desolation and the beauty of winter here.
And in Elk Island, is that also your underlying theme? Is the beauty of winter and the desolation, the isolation?
That's, I guess, to
Is
me,
there an environmental thing happening there, or is there something of the preservation of it?
I can't answer that, and maybe that's why I'm struggling with it, is because I don't really have a consistent kind of a consistent ideal that I'm chasing.
What keeps drawing you back to it? The curiosity of why am I interested in this place at this point? Which is
Partly
help?
the curiosity and partly I'm kind of chasing a picture that I have one image in mind that I'm just keep going back to in the winter because I'm not happy with what I have quite yet.
Okay, but you need, I think that you probably need to define that, because it's almost as if you're haphazardly going back to it without having that preconceived knowing why you're doing this. You don't really know why yet. And I think knowing why is really important.
Yeah.
I'm fine to continue going, but like you're saying, you're trying to dig deeper on it to figure out what the attraction is. What is the underlying motive of
Yeah.
making these photographs?
Yeah, because right now I have, quite a few images and they're nice, but I don't feel an awful lot of emotional connection to a lot of them. Even though
Right.
I kind of have them in my project folder, when I look at them, it's like, well, that's pretty, but in my heart, I know it doesn't really, it just should get tossed out because it's because it's just not running, it's just not working well.
So maybe at this point you can consider them to be research
Oh, yeah, that's an awesome idea.
and try to build on and not use them, but build on it, right? Use them as the ground, the foundation, or the initial research that you're doing. But now you've got to get in touch with your emotions and your feelings as to what are you trying to express there? What is there something spiritual happening at this place? Is there something mysterious? Is there something about the preservation or environmental? Does the quality of light that you see at that particular season, is it saying something to you?
Yes.
What is the importance of this location, and why does this specifically have to be there?
Are you asking a question or asking me to
No,
ask
just
myself?
asking you in general, things to consider.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
is there a continuity in the way that you're photographing it? Is there, obviously you said it was time of day, early in the day you were photographing it. And being winter, they would probably, and if it was it cloudy or sunny or what was it?
Foggy. Yeah,
Foggy.
foggy
Okay.
and stormy and yeah, foggy and stormy.
Okay, so there's a sense of mystery or something of disturbance or disruption. I'm starting to feel like a psychic.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think there's like the fog, like it's kind of a sense of mystery. It adds a sense of beauty. The bison that are up there are to see them, covered with snow and fight, making their way through, knee-deep snow, and they're fascinating animals. And I guess that's a lot of part of the attraction is just kind of the little park that people go to look at the bison, but there's so much more, I guess. I guess there's a sense of history, right? Like this preserving of this unique animal that used to exist in the millions, and now we keep penned up in herds. And yeah, I'd probably have rambled on way too long. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Oh, I love it.
We have a question in a chat, question and comments. Thanks for such an informative presentation. I did not realize that shooting a series was so restrictive. Is the set of instructions that you have shared with us a cut and dried definition or just a basic set of guidelines? Personally, I feel that shooting a group of photos that are so similar can be interpreted as repetitive. I'm really new to this, so perhaps I'm just not understanding the whole concept of a series.
Good question. I'm not setting down rules. I'm giving you guidelines. Guidelines or parameters are relevant only to what you're doing. Okay. I set myself specific parameters as part of my discipline to keep myself within the boundaries of what I was visualizing, so that I'm not going off in other tangents. It provides a roadmap. Now, we all know that when we go on a road trip and we have a road map, that we may make diversions, and that's okay, as long as we don't end up on the East Coast when we're heading to the West Coast. In art, we're always allowed to break the rules, but try to understand what the rules are and why you're breaking it. Can you justify it? Just as I said, I had a photograph where it was cloudy, but while all the other photographs showed strong, harsh light, sunlight, but the photograph itself held enough of the other part of the deeper meaning that I included it. There's a photograph of a piece of plastic hanging on a piece of barbed wire that was so fragile that if I touched it, let's see, do I have my website here? Do. And let me just see if I can find this. First of all, let me show. So this photograph is the one that I'm speaking about where it was cloudy. Okay, so it doesn't, unlike the other photographs where it was sun and you can see distinct shadows and highlights, it appears more alive. Here, there's distinct shadows, distinct sunlight. This is the photograph where there was no wind. But the plastic, I knew that if I came back another day, the plastic would be gone. It was so fragile. It was literally like skin hanging on barbed wire. And I touched it and it just crumbled. I knew that the image held enough significance that I could photograph it despite there not being wind. So yes, you can break the rules. Is it restrictive? It's only restrictive if you want it to be. Let me just. It's hard, in developing a series, especially when you're new to it, you're going to make some mistakes. You're going to be a sense of exploration in there where you're going to be getting frustrated and you might get bored with it. But is it really a subject that you're really, really interested in, or are you forcing yourself because you think you have to do it? These are suggestions that I'm making. In art, it's, you can be as free spirited as you want to be. If you want to not, you don't want to follow the rules, you don't have to. I'm just saying, making these suggestions if you want to produce a potentially successful series of work. Again, there's so many variations because there's so many possibilities for themes or subjects or whatever it is. Does that make sense? Is David still there? I think it would have been repetitive if I would have kept going back to the same piece of plastic day after day after day after day, photographing the same piece of plastic. But then it might have been interesting at the same time because we may have seen a chronological thing happening as far as the decomposition of the plastic over time. But I think it could have definitely been boring.
I have a question, Wes. Do you, you talked about each image having merit on its own. So I'm wondering if do you use your images individually or sell them or do something with them individually, or is it all just as a series, but knowing that each image is strong on its own?
Okay, so oftentimes you will make a submission to a gallery or an online whatever, and you will have submitted a group, you know, as for a solo exhibition or whatever. But the curator may have a different vision of your work. Maybe they're working on an exhibition that is about mortality and loss and remembrance and all those kind of things. But they want to do a more broader vision of it with more artists. So they may request one, they may request 3 images. And I'm open to it. Why not? Why not? As far as selling, and it'll be interesting, but I have never sold any of my photographs. I would like for this Snag series, because it has such a personal connection for me, that if it was to be purchased, that it would be purchased as a series, but it would require a sizable foundation or organization to do so, such as the AFA or the Art Bank or something like that, or a private collector.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thanks for tonight, Wes. It's been very informative and a great presentation and thought-provoking, like Carmen said too. So some ideas rattling around in my head too. So again, thanks on behalf of not just the CAPS Club, but all of the ACCA clubs and the gallery in Sherwood Park as well.
You're very welcome. I think it's got to be interesting from a photo club's point of view, because I don't know whether you guys, do you assign projects and then people come back with their work after you've assigned a theme or a project, or do people just generally come in with whatever they're working on and present it in a review and a critique? Or
we have a monthly assignment where there's a topic and everybody has the opportunity to submit a photograph to that month's topic. And that's actually the next part of our meeting tonight, is our monthly assignment for March, which was on architecture. So we have, looking at it, 16 people submitted.
Yeah. I think, well, I know that it's difficult because some people are hobbyists and just learning to know their camera. So they want to try a lot of things and adventure in a lot of things. And I'm saying, please do that. Please take your camera out with you and shoot like crazy. But then at the same time, you could also be working on it. You could try to focus yourself on a series of images. Still go out and still take all your pictures all you want, because you're adventuring into something that's new to you, maybe. I'm trying to open the doors for another way of thinking about your work, where you might be able to get deeper and more personal about it, other than photographing everything and anything that you see. It's fine, it's totally acceptable to do that. But if you want to try to produce something that's more personal, that has a deeper meaning and maybe a stronger connection to what's going on in your mind and heart, a series might be something that could be a good outlet for those emotions that are being held back. And that's it.
Yeah.
Lots of thank yous for the excellent presentation in the chat. And the last comment here says, thank you, Wes. I think you have us all thinking about creating a series. And I think you have inspired us to maybe think a little bit differently, and also to got some wheels turning about things to do within our club to inspire people to follow some of your ideas and suggestions. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. It's been
Okay.
nice meeting you.
Yeah, thank you, Wes.
Thank you so much.
Somebody just said, any chance of doing a one-on-one? Yes, of course. Sure. You can, if you want, you can put that person in contact with me,
Sure. Yep.
Justin Duff. Okay, yeah, sure. I'm open, may I have an email? Yes, Carmen, can you provide that
Yeah,
information?
I will get in touch with Kristen and get
Great.
that to her. Yeah.
Kristen Duff, I'm sorry. Yeah, Kristen Duff. Perfect. Thank you, Kristen.